Derealization. You are going about your day, walking down a familiar street, sitting in a room you know well, and then without warning, something shifts. Not dramatically, just slightly. The world around you looks the same but feels different, like you are watching it through a thin layer of glass. The colors are correct, the sounds are normal, but the realness of it has dialed down somehow. You are present, but not quite inside the moment. Everything feels like a very convincing set rather than actual life. This is called derealization, a dissociative experience where the external world temporarily loses its sense of reality while remaining visually intact. It is more common than most people realize, appearing most often during periods of high stress, exhaustion, or anxiety. The brain, when overwhelmed, sometimes reduces the intensity of sensory experience as a protective buffer, a way of turning down the volume on reality when reality feels like too much. The side effect is that everything briefly feels fake, and knowing it is not fake does not immediately make the feeling stop. Depersonalization. This one is the inward version. Instead of the world feeling unreal, you feel unreal. You are watching yourself from slightly outside your own body, observing your hands move, hearing your own voice speak, aware of your own thoughts, but with a strange sense of distance from all of it, as though you are a passenger rather than the person in the driver's seat. You know it is you, but the feeling of being you has temporarily gone somewhere you cannot reach. This is called depersonalization, and it often appears alongside derealization, though it can occur independently. Like its outward counterpart, it is most commonly triggered by stress, sleep deprivation, or acute anxiety. The brain's self-monitoring systems and its emotional processing systems briefly fall out of sync, producing the experience of watching your own life from one step removed. For most people, it passes within minutes. For some, it lingers, and the experience of not feeling quite real inside your own body is one of the more quietly unsettling things the brain can produce. Jamais vu. You are writing a word you have written thousands of times. Your name, perhaps, or an ordinary common word. And as you write it, something happens. The word starts to look wrong. Not misspelled, it is correct, but the letters stop looking like they belong together. The word begins to look like a random arrangement of symbols rather than something meaningful, and the longer you stare at it, the stranger it becomes. This is called jamais vu, French for never seen, and it is the opposite of déjà vu. Where déjà vu makes the unfamiliar feel strangely familiar, jamais vu makes the deeply familiar feel suddenly strange and unrecognizable. It happens because the brain's recognition systems can become temporarily fatigued through repetition. When the same neural pathway fires too many times in quick succession, the signal weakens, and what was automatic and instant, recognizing a word, a face, a route, briefly requires conscious effort that it normally does not need. Déjà vu. You are somewhere you have never been before. A new city, a first meeting, a conversation with someone you have just met, and somewhere in the middle of it, a feeling arrives. A quiet certainty that this exact moment has happened before. Not something like it. This specific moment. The words being spoken, the light in the room, the arrangement of everything around you. You cannot say when it happened. You just feel certain that it did. This is called déjà vu, French for already seen, and almost everyone has experienced it at some point. The most widely accepted explanation is a timing error in memory processing. The brain runs two systems simultaneously, one for processing new experiences and one for retrieving memories. And occasionally, these systems briefly fall out of sync. The new experience gets tagged as familiar before it has been fully processed as new, producing a feeling of recognition that has no actual source to point to. The Capgras Delusion. A man recovers from a severe brain injury and returns home to his family. He recognizes his wife completely, her face, her voice, her mannerisms. He knows she is his wife in every verifiable way, but he is convinced, with complete and unshakable certainty, that she is an imposter. Someone who looks and sounds exactly like her but is not actually her. The real her is somewhere else. This is called the Capgras Delusion, one of the most striking neurological phenomena the brain can produce. It occurs when the neural connection between facial recognition and emotional response is severed or disrupted. Normally, seeing someone familiar triggers both recognition and a warm feeling of familiarity. When the emotional signal is missing, the brain tries to explain the discrepancy. The face is correct, but something feels wrong, and concludes that the person must be a replacement. The logic is coherent. The premise it is built on is not. Truman Syndrome. You have the persistent, unshakable feeling that you are being watched, not in a paranoid way, in a structured way, that your life is somehow a performance, that the events around you are too convenient or too arranged to be entirely random, that there are cameras somewhere, that other people know something about the shape of your existence that you do not. This is called Truman Syndrome, named after the 1998 film in which a man discovers his entire life has been a television show produced without his knowledge. Psychiatrists began documenting a cluster of patients describing almost identical experiences after the film's release, and the pattern has continued since. It sits at the intersection of paranoia and a specific kind of existential unease, the feeling that reality is a construction you are inside of but not fully part of, and that the architecture of your life has been arranged by someone or something outside your awareness. The doorway effect. You stand up with a clear purpose. You know exactly what you are going to get. You walk into the next room, and the moment you cross the threshold, the thought is completely gone. Not fuzzy, not on the tip of your tongue, simply absent. You stand there, retracing nothing, and then walk back to where you started, and the thought returns. This is called the doorway effect, and it happens because the brain organizes memory by context and environment. Each location acts as a kind of mental container, grouping together the thoughts and intentions that belong to that setting. Walking through a doorway signals to the brain that one context has ended and another has begun. The intention formed in the previous room was filed with that room, and stepping back into it reopens the file. Your memory was not failing. It was simply following its own organizational logic, which does not always align with what you actually needed it to do. Highway hypnosis. You have been driving for an hour on a long, familiar road. The route is one you know well, and at some point you realize that you cannot account for the last 20 or 30 minutes. You were clearly present. You stayed in your lane, responded to traffic, made the right turns. But there is no conscious memory of any of it. The driving happened on its own, without you. This is called highway hypnosis, a state of automaticity where a well-practiced task is executed entirely by the brain's procedural systems, while conscious awareness drifts elsewhere. It happens most easily with tasks that have been repeated enough times to become automatic: driving a familiar route, walking a known path, performing a routine sequence of actions. The brain delegates the task to lower-level systems and frees conscious attention for other things, which means you arrive somewhere with no clear memory of the journey that got you there. Semantic satiation. You pick a word, any word, and repeat it out loud 10 times in a row. By the 7th or 8th repetition, something has happened. The word has stopped sounding like a word. It sounds like a noise, a meaningless collection of sounds that no longer seem to connect to anything. You know what it means. But it has temporarily lost all sense of meaning. This is called semantic satiation, and it happens because rapid repetition fatigues the neural connection between the sound of a word and its meaning. The pathway between the auditory signal and the concept it represents fires so quickly and repeatedly that the signal weakens. The sound remains. The meaning stops loading. It recovers within seconds once you stop, but in that brief window, language itself briefly falls apart. A completely ordinary word becoming alien through nothing more than repetition. The frequency illusion. You learn a new word, or you buy a new car, or you become aware of something you had never consciously noticed before. And suddenly, within days, you are seeing it everywhere. The word appears in 3 separate articles. The car model passes you on the street multiple times a day. The thing you just learned about seems to be coming up constantly in conversation. It feels like the world has suddenly filled with something that was not there before. This is called the frequency illusion, sometimes called the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, and nothing has actually changed in the world around you. What changed is what your brain is filtering for. Attention is selective, and once something is flagged as relevant, the brain begins pulling it out of the background noise it was always part of. It was always there. You simply were not looking for it, and now you are.